Peace, peace. You're now tuned into G Consciousness Live. What's going on, family? Got some of this audio over here with Age of Deceit Part 2, dealing with alchemy. Y'all going to check this out, so I'm going to play this for a minute, let y'all listen to it, and see what y'all think about it. Let me grab it real quick. I'm only going to play the audio due to the fact of I don't want to get hit with any copyright or, not really sure how it works, so it's going to play the audio. Let me jump over here and grab this real quick. Let's look at this. Make sure y'all share and let people know that I am live. But I want you guys to check out this audio. Pretty good information. What the deal is, what's really going on here. Alright, so, and this is from Face Like the Sun.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Share a similar fable of something lost in history. They've already.
Alright, so this is the beginning of it. Hopefully y'all enjoy. Just a little bit of it.
The church in America is going to suffer so terribly. And we laugh now, but they will come after us, and they will come after our children. They will close the net around us while we are playing soccer mom and soccer dad, while we're arguing over so many little things and mesmerized by so many trinkets. The net even now is closing around you and your children and your grandchildren, and it does not cause you to fear. You will be isolated from society, as has already happened. Anyone who tries to run for office who actually believes the Bible will be considered a lunatic until finally they are silenced. We will be called things that we're not and persecuted not for being followers of Christ, but for being radical fundamentalists who do not know the true way of Christ, which of course is love and tolerance. You go down as the greatest bigots and haters of mankind in history. They've already come after your children, and for most of you, they got them. They got them through the public schools and indoctrination, and the university and indoctrination, and then you wonder why your children come out not serving the Lord. It's because you fed them right into the devil's mouth. So little by little, the net is closing around, and then it's not little by little. Look how fast things are going downhill just in a matter of weeks. But at the same time, know this: persecution is always meant for evil, but God always means it for good. And is it not better to suffer in this life to have an extra weight of glory in heaven? You must settle this in your mind. This is the one thing I want to say over and over. Down through history, you have a wrong idea of martyrdom and persecution. You think that these men were persecuted and martyred for their sincere faith in Jesus Christ. That was the real reason, but no one heard that publicly. They were martyred, and they were persecuted as enemies of the state, as bigots, as narrow-minded, stupid people who had fallen for a ruse and can contribute nothing to society. Your suffering will not be noble. So your mind must be filled with the Word of God when all people persecute you and turn on you. This is no game. You want revival and awakening, but know this. For the most part, great awakenings have come only preceding great national catastrophes or the persecution of the church. I believe God is bringing a great awakening, but I believe that He is raising up young men who are strong in trust in the providence of God to be able to wade through the hell that's going to break loose on us. And it will be on us before we even recognize it. Unless in God's providence, He is not done. He is not done. think there are lots of interesting discoveries, biological, on Earth, and other discoveries in the heavens that those of you who are younger will get to see unfold. You'll have all kind of problems with them, but on balance, it'll be a plus. And it'll make life much more interesting.
I do think, first of all, that there are a number of impersonal forces which are pushing in the direction of less and less freedom. And I also think that there are a number of technological devices which anybody who wishes to use can use to accelerate this process of going away from freedom, of imposing control.
We have 300 million cataract dimensions, including more projects by my estimate. That hierarchy we build ourselves, that each of these cataract dimensions is capable of connecting itself to other neocortexes. To build this hierarchy, we build that hierarchy. Before that, we're going to put these gateways. This is a gateway to the cloud. We're going to put gateways to the cloud in our brains and have more than 300 million.
This threat is not new. The technology and the internet increase its frequency and, in some cases, its lethality. Today, a person can consume hateful propaganda, commit themselves to a violent agenda, and learn how to kill without leaving their home.
I see virtual reality as a way not of escaping any notion of empirical reality, but as a way of reportraying invisible levels of the given world that are very vital and important to us.
Once they are persuaded that cyber-conscious beings value their life, that leads to discovery. We go back to alchemy. Talked that the philosopher's stone was a literal elixir of life. It was kind of a universal vaccine. Well, lo and behold, what they are searching for is quite literally the philosopher's stone. Now I'm going to get into the great tree of knowledge and the wisdom that has been denied us by someone who does not want us to have this knowledge. Who this someone is, I don't know. I wish I did. You know, John Lash, the great Nag Hammadi scholar, he says the Nag Hammadi texts, which were found 2,000 years ago in Egypt, or they were buried 2,000 years ago in Egypt and found in 1947. And what's great about the Nag Hammadi is they haven't been tainted by anyone. No pope, no politician, no historian has rewritten anything in there. So we're reading exactly what they wanted us to read 2,000 years ago. Okay? Nobody's got their meat on it. No spin. Nag Hammadi says that about 1,600 years ago before them, or about 3,600 years ago, the Earth was invaded by something called the Archons, which is close to the Anunnaki. And they don't say they're beings. They describe it more like a virus, an off-planet virus. And these Archons came, and what these Archons are is they do not possess the divine essence that we possess. And they're very jealous of us for that. And so they're creating a world, this is what Nag Hammadi says, a simulated world all around us. It's all simulated. And what it is trying to show that they can create everything that the God has created, the beautiful earth and the flowers and everything. They can do just as good a job as nature can do, only they do it fake. And the point of the archons, according to Nagamani, is to make you think that their reality is the reality, not the real reality. So I suspect that's who told us you can't have the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Because once you understand what is going on here, you can free yourself of the archons. And I believe the archons are here. And I believe they're everywhere. And I think they are a virus.
Atlantis, Mu, Arcadia, the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone. They all share a similar fable of something lost sought to be regained. According to the ancient mystery religions, the Garden of Eden was not a physical location on earth, but quite literally a spiritual dimension synonymous to the heavens above. Moreover, it was believed that the sacred stone responsible for the mysterious qualities to mind and matter also came from this enigmatic point in time and space. In Celtic mythology, an immortal named Arthur of Camelot will one day return at some future time from the Isle of Avalon. Avalon in Welsh means apple, giving rise to the false notion that the fruit from the forbidden tree of knowledge, which God forbid Adam and Eve to eat, was in fact an apple. In Greek mythology, Apollo is known as the god of knowledge and light, wisdom and divination, music and medicine, and even prophecy. In the Hellenistic period, he became known as the Titan, god of the sun. His twin sister Artemis was known as Selene, or the moon goddess. The Book of Acts mentions what the city of Ephesus believed to be the origin of Artemis. Quote, "And when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, 'Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is temple keeper of the great Artemis, and of the sacred stone that fell from the sky?'" The Muslim Kaaba stone is yet another creation myth that mentions a sacred stone which fell from heaven to earth. The stone was thought to be a fragment of the first paradise. Islamic author Ibn Abbas states, quote, "Muhammad said, 'Indeed, the Islamic teaching of the origin of Adam say that the paradise in which he lived and was subsequently expelled was not even on the earth.'" According to historian Rundle Clark, the Egyptian creation myth mentions a stone that fell from heaven called the Benben stone. This stone was believed to bring the vital essence of life from what is called the Isle of Fire. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, believed to have been written by Thoth, the father of alchemy, tells of the place where the life essence of humanity originates, Neter Kurt, which means island or mountain of God. The mysterious regenerative qualities of the stone have also been long associated with the rising phoenix, which has its connections with the ancient city of Phoenicia, otherwise known as Sidon or Tyre. The city of Tyre is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, where the king of Tyre is overlaid with the description of Satan, who had fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. It is evident that with this brief survey of ancient creation myths, these occult traditions have forever been the common thread between the practices of esoteric spirituality like alchemy, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah, but also of the secret orders such as the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and even the Illuminati. The late Christian prophecy author David Flynn summarized, quote, "The common thread within most ancient creation stories was the union of the celestial and terrestrial at a particular time of unparalleled upheaval and change. The marriage of heaven and earth gave birth to the worldwide legends of the gods who descended from the heavens."
Well, alchemy is actually one of the most ancient of the sacred sciences. Its origins are stretching far back into history. In the terms of the alchemists themselves, alchemy was the transformation and transmutation of metals. But in a broader sense, this transformation takes place on all different levels, not just a physical level, but mental and spiritual levels, and not just for metals, but for all creatures. All of creation is going through this process of transformation. One alchemist described alchemy as celestial agriculture. And this is a sense that everything in nature is alive and transforming, going through a process of development. Frater Albertus described alchemy as a process of consciously assisted evolution, where the operator himself is consciously involved in his own evolution.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot more than the commonly held belief that it's transmuting base metals into gold. If you look in the dictionary, that's the standard definition for alchemy, turning lead into gold. But there's quite a bit more to it than just that.
Mm-hmm. And can you go into a little more depth about the origin of alchemy?
The origins of alchemy are lost to history. In most of the scholars will agree that alchemy in the Western tradition began in ancient Egypt, possibly 10, 12,000 years ago. According to ancient legends and stories, even back then, alchemy had a divine origin. There was a race of spiritually ascended people who walked the earth and taught mankind the arts of civilization. And even in ancient times, there were fantastic stories that to Adam, later to Moses and Abraham. Fallen angels taught it to human women in exchange for sexual favors. And these were in ancient times. In more recent times, it's been proposed that this was a technology that stems from Atlantean technology, that aliens brought it to Earth. But if you follow the thread of history itself, somewhere in ancient Egypt, there was a sacred science. It was called the divine art. And that was the origins of alchemy. And you can actually follow the processes through the various priesthood who kept this as a secret science, and it was passed along from generation to generation under oaths of secrecy. It was developed as a secret science and very closely guarded secrets.
The origin of alchemy is as mysterious as the practice itself, but its influence has been vital to human civilization. Alchemy, through the sacred arts, has been part of ancient Egypt, the mystical Jewish practice of Kabbalah, Zoroastrianism, Christian Gnosticism, mystical factions of Islam, Chinese mysticism, the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, the Golden Dawn, and even the Illuminati. Up until philosophical materialism became the main proponent of the scientific worldview, alchemy, as a main branch of the Hermetic arts, was the foundation for all scientific and technological inquiry. In fact, it is through the philosophical tradition of Hermeticism that inspired many scientific and technological breakthroughs throughout recorded human history. A.E. White, a 20th century British scholarly mystic who was the first to attempt a scholarly study of Western occultism, found that, quote, the earliest extant work of alchemy which is as yet known in the West is the Papyrus of Lead, which was discovered at Thebes. The practices exposed in this papyrus are the same as those of the oldest Greek alchemists, such as Pseudo-Democritus, Zosimus, Olympiodorus, and Pseudo-Moses. This demonstration is of the highest importance for the study of the origins of alchemy. It proves it to have been found on something more than purely chimerical fancies. It is impossible to separate the Lead papyrus from a close relationship with its context of other papyri, as admitted by Berthelot, who said, the history of magic and Gnosticism is closely bound up with that of the origin of alchemy, and the alchemical papyrus of Lead connects in every respect with two in the same series which are solely magical and Gnostic.
It's interesting, though, we now know for sure from declassified Central Intelligence Agency documents that Jerry Garcia was working for the CIA. Absolutely. Spreading all this LSD and drugs to everybody, encouraging the kids to think about necromancy and communication with the dead, promoting the drug revolution. He was a CIA operative. Yes. Isn't that an amazing thing? Just as some people who worship Jerry Garcia, seems to be their anti-establishment. But he was par excellence establishment. What a deceit we have in America today.
It is so subtle, and it's all around us. It's like, I mean, the Brotherhood is the filter that the stars rise up through. So here we have Demi Moore, and of course she was a rising star, and she just had a Kabbalistic wedding.
Yeah, she is a Kabbalist.
Well, have a look at this clip. Play this clip, Shay.
Always, it seems, something about to blow up around Madonna, which brings us to the latest controversy. Her new documentary, I'm going to tell you a secret. Clearly, her belief in Kabbalah, the study of Jewish mysticism, has deeply affected her. Is the young woman who once so publicly rejected the Catholic faith of her childhood now Jewish?
You attend Jewish services now. Well, that's what some people think. I don't attend Jewish services.
Straighten us out.
Well, I hear the Torah, but I'm not Jewish, and nor have I converted to Judaism. I think I'm connecting to something that predates religion.
According to occult author Manly P. Hall in his infamous book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, it states, quote, early initiates of the Kabbalistic mysteries believed that its principles were first taught by God to a school of his angels before the fall of man. The angels later communicated the secrets to Adam, so that through the knowledge gained from an understanding of its principles, fallen humanity might regain its lost state. The angel Raziel was dispatched from heaven to instruct Adam in the mysteries of the Kabbalah. Different angels were employed to initiate the succeeding patriarchs in this difficult science. Most esoteric authors believe that the origin of alchemy and the knowledge of the mysteries originate in ancient Egypt, in particular from a deity named Thoth, who later became known as Hermes Trismegistus. Garth Fowden, in his book, The Egyptian Hermes, A Historical Approach to the Late Pagan Mind, states, quote, Thoth was among the most diverse and popular of all the Egyptian gods. In particular, Thoth was regarded even in the most primitive period as the moon god. Thoth came to be regarded as the origin both of cosmic order and of religious and civil institutions. He presided over almost every aspect of the temple cults, law, and the civil year, and in particular over the sacred rituals, texts, and formulae, and the magic arts that were so closely related. To him, as divine scribe, inventor of writing, and lord of wisdom, the priesthood attributed much of its sacred literature, and of the occult powers latent in all these aspects of the cult of the gods, Thoth was the acknowledged source. By extension, he came to be regarded as the lord of knowledge, language, and all science, even as understanding or reason personified. The influence of Thoth's later title, Hermes Trismegistus, has been the root of knowledge for the history of mankind. What is now referred to as the Hermetic Order and its outworking of Hermeticism has influenced some of the most familiar names, including Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Galileo, Kepler, Da Vinci, and Isaac Newton. Even Copernicus arrived at his revolutionary insights about the heliocentric solar system by mere, quote, including the hidden works of Thoth himself. In fact, Hermeticism is so influential that even the biblical method of hermeneutics comes from the same root, Hermes, the, quote, tutelary divinity of speech, writing, and eloquence.
Many ancient cultures, all around the world actually, talk about gaining knowledge from elsewhere. You know, ancient aliens, they're always talking about ancient aliens. Well, it's true. I mean, that part of it is anyway, that, you know, the people around the world claim that they had received knowledge and understanding of how to build megalithic structures and things of that nature from elsewhere. Now, I don't believe that we're talking about astronauts, ancient astronaut theory. I don't buy that. We're not talking about people from the Pleiades or Arcturus or Orion or whatever. I believe we're talking about the archons. Well, what are the archons? Well, first of all, it's just a Greek word. It's nothing mystical about it. The word archon just simply means chief, commander with authority. Ruler. It's talking about a person in a position of leadership. In the Book of Enoch, we see that 200 Watcher-class angels landed on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. And among those 200, we are given a series of names, about 20, 21 names. These would be the archons of the 200. These would be the leaders of the 200. And, the book of Enoch tells you, point blank, that these angels taught men a whole lot of things, Azazel or Azazel taught men the art of digging up the metals of the earth and, creating weapons of warfare, among other things. So we've got a detailed description right there in the Hebrew, extra biblical text of Enoch. But other cultures describe very similar things, that beings from elsewhere came down and taught them stuff.
I would like to reiterate that I do not believe the Book of Enoch is inspired scripture, but as we look at this following quote through the context of alchemy, we will see that it was a vital part of the teachings. The Book of Enoch, chapter 8, verse 1, states, quote, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, and fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stones of every valuable and select kind, and of all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. If Hermes, by way of Thoth, is considered the god of knowledge and wisdom by the Egyptians and Hellenistic Greeks, then Azazel, the Watcher, would be the equivalent in the Book of Enoch. It is interesting to note that Azazel is mentioned 3 times in the Bible, all in the book of Leviticus. The word Azazel means scapegoat, or more specifically, entire removal. Later, in the book of Enoch, chapter 9, verse 6, it states, quote, See then what Azazel has done, how he has taught all iniquity on the earth, and revealed the eternal secrets that are made in heaven. Then later, in chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, Enoch delivers a message of the fate of the watchers as appointed by God. Quote, You will not have peace. A severe sentence has come out against you, that you should be bound, and you will have neither rest nor mercy, nor the granting of any petitions, because of the wrong which you have taught, and because of all the works of blasphemy and wrong and sin which you have shown to the sons of men. This reminds us of a passage we read in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. The possible connection between Azazel and Thoth is further realized when we consider the channeled writings of Dr. Doriel, a man who allegedly had connections to the Great White Lodge. He published the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean in 1925, not to be mistaken with the Emerald Tablet or the Smeridine Table that we will reference shortly. In these particular channeled writings, there is a passage that states, quote, Know ye, O people amongst whom I walk, that I, Thoth, have all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom known to man since the ancient days. Keeper I have been of the secrets of the great race, holder of the key that leads into fire. Bringer up have I been to ye, O my children, even from the darkness of the ancient of days. Here, Thoth, through Dr. Doriel, claims himself to be the father of mankind, calling us my children. He contrasts himself from the darkness of the Ancient of Days, a title for God in the book of Daniel. These clues are a dead giveaway of who is actually behind the identity of Thoth, or Azazel. However, the channelings don't end there. Dr. John Dee, who was a 16th century occultist, practiced alchemy and the sacred arts. He believed that the promise of immortality lied in the secrets held by the one the Bible says walked with God for 300 years, and did not see death, for God took him. While the Bible emphasizes Enoch's unique faith in God, Dr. John Dee felt that it was Enoch's works that allowed him to walk with God and not see death. It would be a mistake to believe that Enoch's privileges were a result of any kind of magical workings or alchemical spells. So what drove Dr. John Dee to pursue such a lofty goal in the first place? Jeffrey James, an author and journalist who's written for Wired.com, the New York Times, among other mainstream media outlets, published a book called The Enochian Evocation back in 1984. This book was a modern translation of angelic communication originally transcribed by Dr. John Dee and his partner Edward Kelly as they gazed into crystal balls in 1582. These so-called angels told Dee that they must re-establish the magical sciences which had been lost due to man's wickedness. They also told D that the one who successfully harnesses these magical arts will bestow superhuman powers, change the political landscape, and bring about the apocalypse. Moreover, these so-called angels taught John Dee and Edward Kelly the language of the angels. In the 2009 Weiser edition of the Enochian Evocation of Dr. John Dee, author Jeffrey James wrote in his preface, quote, I expected my book to be well received by the scholarly community. Instead, most of the interest in the Enochian evocation has come, as far as I can tell, from practicing occultists. Academics have, by contrast, virtually ignored it. The primary reason for the evident distaste among the ivy-colored professors is probably my assertion in the original introduction that the angelic, aka Enochian language, has characteristics suggesting that it has non-human origins. A completely new language that's non-human in origin. Yes, that's the kind of controversial statement that simply won't be tolerated among academics. I might as well clarify that statement, not for their benefit, but simply for the historical record. While I believe that it's probably that the angelic language was devised by somebody, most likely Kelly, either consciously or subconsciously, non-human characteristics do exist in the language and, as such, provide the best proof that we're ever likely to see of the existence of non-corporeal intelligence. Even if such beings are unlikely, the angelic language is still the only example of glossolalia, speaking in tongues, that involves a hitherto unknown language with its own grammar and syntax. This is a very different phenomenon from instances where entranced folks repeat languages they might have heard when a child, or, in the case of Pentecostal Christianity, spout out whatever jibber-jabber comes to their heads. In other words, this book is important because it's the only publication, scholarly or otherwise, that fairly assesses the unique and possibly significant phenomenon of the angelic language and how it was dictated. Like all channeled material, it seemed that what Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly communicated with were fallen spirits, masquerading as angels of light in desperate pursuit of the agenda to manifest their leader, Lucifer.
I think the same thing's happening in our day. You talk about the Nazis and, how did they do what they do and build the rockets and all that stuff, and Werner von Braun and others are, they kind of smile at you and say, we had help. Even Steve Jobs, regarding the computers and stuff like that. These people, they claim to have got inspiration, knowledge, wisdom, whatever, from elsewhere. And of course, you've got, some of the theories that you see in the X-Files, that maybe our government is trading humans for knowledge and technology with the fallen ones. Could be. I mean, how else are we to explain the massive increase in technology, transportation, everything in the 20th century? I mean, we went from essentially a flat line for like 6,000 years. It was, horse and buggy, beast of burden for 6,000 years. So all of a sudden, planes, trains, automobiles, supposedly putting a man on the moon, sending probes to the farthest reaches of our solar system and beyond, and creating telescopes that could look to the farthest reaches of our universe. How did all that happen in less than 100 years? Unless maybe we had help.
If we observe the quickening pace of scientific and technological progress, along with the fact that such books as The Enochian Evocation being republished in our time, we can speculate that these fallen angels have been hard at work and are gaining ground very quickly. Another obscure account of the passing down of alchemical and Earth were once together.
My bad, yeah, I didn't stop it and then did some other stuff, but hold on for a minute. Yeah, so hold on, let me see something.
The veil is a concept that I didn't see for a very long time, and really most people haven't actually seen this idea of a veil between heaven and earth. But I began to discover it when I looked in Revelation chapter 6, and it says that the heavens are going to recede like a scroll. And Isaiah 34:4, it says the same thing, the heavens will recede like a scroll. And I kept thinking, well, what does that mean? Does this mean that the sun, moon, and stars are going to somehow just shrink right up and they're going to go away? Are they going to get wrapped up in what's left, But then I went back and I saw in Scripture in Ezekiel chapter 1, where he says that he was sitting by the river of Chebar in Babylon, and he saw the heavens opened, and he saw visions of God. So it wasn't that the sun, moon, and stars and the universe suddenly, opened up. It was that there was some kind of a membrane, a veil, a force field, if you will, between heaven and earth. We see this also when Jesus comes up out of the water at his baptism. It says that the heavens were opened and the Holy Spirit descended like a dove. And a voice was heard from heaven saying, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." Stephen, when he's being stoned, he saw the heavens opened and he saw Jesus up there, not far away, mind you. And then John, in the book of Revelation, saw the heavens open. Now, at another place, in 2 Kings chapter 6, Elisha and his servant wake up one morning and they find the Syrians have surrounded them. And Elisha's not worried, but his servant is. And Elisha prays, "Lord, I pray you to open the young man's eyes that he might see." And the Lord does. And then he's able to see horses and chariots of fire all around. Well, that's because his eyes were open. He could finally see through this barrier, whatever we want to call it. But I think veil is a good term for that, because we have in Isaiah chapter 25, he says, on this mountain, God will swallow up the covering that covers all people and the veil that is over all nations. So he's going to take away this veil. Even in Isaiah 60.
Right. So basically, this is clear when we begin to look at this veil, right? It's the veil of the mind. And not only that, the veil represents separation, because when we look at how God has separated himself, it all starts back from the Garden of Eden, when men begin to do other things, seek other type of another way. So the veil immediately came up because we know that Adam said he hid himself from God. So when one hide away or hide themselves, right then and there is a blockage right there. There's something that is secret there in the relationship that he once had with God in the garden, with God meeting with him in the cool of the day. Something has happened now. So we have to look at that. So when we look at the veil was even set up, or the veils even in the tabernacle. When we look at what was going on in the wilderness, and also when we look at what was going on with the temple, the veil was something that was established, and only the priest, the high priest, can go beyond that veil, and he was the mediator between God and man. So we have to look at also that when Christ died and rose again, the veil was rent from the top to the bottom, signifying that we may be able to enter into a new way, those that are born again, those that have been born of the word and of the water, or of the spirit. The word and of the spirit, we can enter in that veil. So this is a initiation process within the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek to see the face of God and enter in, and also be presented with the mercy seat sitting right there and see the face of God. Whereas before, you couldn't see the face of God. So God has taken us and positioned us into a kingdom where his son are transporting us, or basically transitioning us out from this place unto that kingdom, if that's to be understood. So yeah, there's curtains up, and when there's curtains up, curtains represent privacy. But it shouldn't be like that with a relationship that we should have with our Father, especially the relationship that we once had with him in the Garden of Eden, for as Adam, and we being from Adam.
4. Isaiah says, "Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down." Now, the word there, rend, it means literally to break, to tear. Well, how do you tear the heavens? I mean, what does that mean? Again, are we talking where the sun, moon, and stars exist? Is that the thing that we're talking about tearing? No, it's not talking about that at all. It's the same thing where the heavens were opened for Ezekiel, or the heavens were opened for Stephen. That is what he's talking about tearing. Now, let's go, by way of analogy, let's go to the tabernacle. God told Moses to carefully follow the instructions given him because the tabernacle was a copy of the heavenly tabernacle. So we can now look at the earthly tabernacle to get a very good idea of what the heavenly tabernacle is like. Well, there's an outer gate that separates just, everybody, the animals, everything, the riffraff outside from this now holy place. And then in there you have the altar, you have the lavers where they would wash, and then you have the smaller structure, and in there you have the holy place, and then you have the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. So there's an outer gate, an outer veil, and then there's an inner gate between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So there are these two veils. Now, we see that when Jesus was crucified, the veil, the outer veil, mind you, was actually torn. Not the inner veil, but the outer veil was actually torn from top to bottom. And that is a sign of what is coming. That there's going to be a restoration of all things. Now, it's been done in the legal sense, but it hasn't been done yet in the practical sense. We still don't dwell with God face to face, but we're going to one day. That's God's desire, is that we would live with him, we'd be able to walk with him. When God created Adam and Eve, and they're in the garden, God came walking in the cool of the evening. That seems to be that there was no problem doing that until one day Adam sinned, and then he wanted to cover himself. He wanted to hide, because now there was an incompatibility between him and God. There was a problem. He tried to cover himself.
We will explore the veil in detail later in the film as it pertains to the Tower of Babel, hallucinogenic drugs, and the eventual tearing down of the veil with the return of Jesus Christ. For now, it is important to understand that the goal of alchemy is to gain back what was once lost, not through any means of grace, as the gospel of Jesus Christ teaches, but rather through the works of our own hands. It is this occult spiritual philosophy of regeneration through the enigmatic stone that fell from heaven that lies at the heart of modern scientific and technological progress in pursuit of human immortality.
Connection again. Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Great to be with you. How's it going, Rob?
It's going great, man. How are you guys doing?
Great to be on the show with the awesome national agenda. What I think everyone needs to know about other people, particularly what they want.
Because it's your own channel. It's so nice to be on
People sometimes say about us, you guys are taking a step way too left because you guys are laughing all the time. And that's what started it. And we openly wanted to say, Lord, we'll help any of these, whatever.
If that's the way the Antichrist is going to arrive, I don't know, but I know that the book of Revelation tells us in Revelation 17 that the world is going to marvel at he who was and is not and yet is. There's a lot of minds that are being made up that say, hey, we too with God. The God of the Bible is this ridiculous.
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio. Here's Basil and Mons.
Let's go back to Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, the serpent's there in the garden, right, with Eve, and, he's tempting her, with the fruit, and he says, you're not going to die. You will not surely die. For God doth know that in the day that you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, right? So what do we see there? We see three promises of the serpent. He says immortality, right? You're not going to die. Your eyes will be open. You'll have greater wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, right? And you shall be as the gods. You know what's funny about those three? Adam and Eve already had them. Adam and Eve already had those three. They were already immortal. But death didn't come until after they took a bite. Their eyes open, having greater wisdom and understanding. Come on, they walked in the garden with God, the creator of the universe. It's kind of like, hey, God, how did the Milky Way get there? Well, let me tell you, Adam. I mean, how much more wisdom and understanding do you need than walking in the garden with God every day, the creator of the universe, right? And you shall be as gods. They already were. They were made in the image and likeness of God. So the three promises of the serpent, they already had. They took a bite and they lost all three. And man has been trying to get it back ever since, apart from God. I think the real agenda of transhumanism is to get back.
Now, you see what he said? Now, we can actually take that and look at that and relate to that, because when you go to, watch this, when you go to Psalms, they're trying to get something back, everything, the tree of life, apart from God. This is why they accuse God. Look what Psalms 2 says. Watch what this says. It says, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves against the rulers and take counsel together against the Lord. This is what the kings of the earth is doing. This is what Nimrod was doing. When you read what Josephus' account was, Josephus said that he was waging war on God. It says against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder. In other words, whatever connection that God has to this world in regards to bands, or in biblical cord to this world, or the attachment, they want to break those things, the kings and rulers. And remember, the kings and the rulers are over us. So this is the beast system that Nimrod was setting up, which was a new world order. And this is the very government system that's heading us today. And now that they understand each other now, and they have all transliteration to form one language, one currency, one government, they're going to build again and defy God by ways of teaching false evolution, by ways of teaching things in our school to miseducate us. This is what's going on among the people. This is why when we look in Revelation 17, it says that the beast or the mystery Babylon system had the kings of this world and the people that she was sitting on. She had them influenced by the substance that was in that cup. Every wicked way, adulterous things, fornication, spiritual fornication. So the beast system is conveying to us, or is consists of economics, politics, and religion. And those spin off by ways of people that act in the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, and also the lust of the eyes. The very same things that we've seen in the Garden of Eden. The lust of the flesh, the pride of life, and also the lust of the eyes. The same thing that Jesus talked about just as well. So it says, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. So this is one of the things that this government system want to do. And Nimrod was actually setting that up. And so when you actually look at his name, when it says they shall rebel, or they will rebel, or to rebel, he was rebelling against the instruction that was given unto them, and he himself was establishing a new world order. Josephus said it to be a government that they had back then. He was a mighty hunter, so because he hunted well, he lorded over the people, and also he fortified cities and taught the people how to hunt, and they looked at him as a hero or as a god, and he took the ability that he had and used that as gain, and also used it to basically establish Mystery Babylon religion.
Back to three things that humans lost in the garden, and to be like God, achieve immortality apart from God, have supernatural ability, become the gods of the ancient world. That's the agenda. That's what they're working on, and it's happening. It's happening very quickly, and we need to be aware of it.
Terence McKenna, who was the scientist who was the originator of time wave theory and novelty theory, and who experimented with DMT and other psychoactive mind-expanding drugs and made contact with the Greys and the ETs and all the rest of them, but then would have to come down off his high and come back to this reality, speculated that in the very near future, via human enhancement, we will no longer need these psychoactive drugs because we'll alter our brains to put ourselves in contact.
It is very important because now we're facing the time where unconscious evolution period.
Very important what he just said. They're using drugs and substance to basically enhance the be up under the influence of demonic possession. This is why when one gets up under the substance, he is vulnerable to do anything. And also these drugs make him sensitive to where he's sensitive to the very touch, or she's sensitive to the very touch. This is how homosexuality rises up. Why? Because the drugs are making them so vulnerable and up under the influence, to be influenced by demonic possessions, which causes them to be desensitized. I mean, to be so sensitized to where these people are basically rubbing on each other in these clubs, very influenced to have sexual pleasure with actually anything and anybody. This is why the substance or the drugs is one of the biggest tools that's being used by those that are Satanists, and also by Satan himself, the accuser or the adversary, which is a enemy of man and God. So we got to look at that and view that like that. These people are getting higher and higher, as high as they can get. And we wonder why homosexuality and fornication and adultery is running rapidly. Why? Because people are up under the influence. We wonder why at one point in time somebody was biting, eating somebody's face off due to all types of X pills or all types of drugs. Why? Because it's causing these hallucinations within their minds, and therefore they're under the substance and they can be influenced to do anything. Rappers getting in showers with other men and very sensitive to the very touch, to where they are aroused by men doing those things that they would have never done had they had not been up under the influence of God or the Spirit of God. So the drugs is making it more easy for people to be targets of these demonic spirits.
Has almost finished, and we come to the new era when new period of controlled human evolution can happen. I think that main efforts of their scientists and main technological progress will be concentrated on their making new body for the human being. So the first step is to make human-like robot, which we call avatar, and to make their perfect control system via brain-computer interface. The second step will be to develop their system of human brain life support and to connect it to the avatar, so disabled people and people who are at the edge of dying can enhance their lifespan. And the third one, finally making the artificial brain to which we can transfer the individual consciousness. And we have one more project, which is actually our dream. It is producing hologram-like avatar body.
でスーパーコンピューターができて、でその中へ人間が入り込むと、こう希望的観測としてね。あるいはそれが嫌な場合は、先ほどの人間の肉体があって、で体はこう死ぬいろいろ故障。
Well, let me let you know what he's saying, because this is, this is audio, but there is actually, captions up here. It says, if you don't like that, then he will change our bodies as we get older. Our bodies begin to break down, doesn't it not? So basically, we're getting off into changing the body, whether if it's enhancing or basically understanding the molecular structure of the body to increase its functionality or to repair it. And also creating a body to transfer your consciousness to that body, and so that body won't decay. But that body will be a body that you can transfer your consciousness to that and attach mainly machine, because you won't get more too much machine wear, but you will have your consciousness, and every molecular machine that you had in your body will be now mainly computerized. This is the hope for them. This is what they want to do, because the thing about it is the tree of life. Let's read something real quick. The tree of life, and most people say, well, the tree of life is Jesus, but that's partial. And I'm gonna tell you why. Let's look at this. He says, let's look at this real quick. It's much more than that. It's much more than that. Genesis 3, and let's go to let's go to 22. Genesis 3 and 22. Let's read that real quick. It says, and the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us. In other words, to know good and evil. That's how he became like God in the aspect of the knowledge and what good and evil is. But it's deeper than that, because when you look up good, or when you look up the word rather, and it's dealing with basically also calamity, misery. God has not experienced those things, but he has seen those things befall rebels. So he definitely knows about it. He knows about those things, right? As well as we know that also the Bible says he created calamity for those that he will bring evil on them when they would disobey him. We look at Isaiah 45, I believe. So calamity, misery, misfortune is something that he created as punishment for those that miss the mark or do not obey him or obey his instructions. So watch what it says. It says, the man has become one of us to know good and evil. That's the aspect. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life. In other words, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life. This is a great indication that this tree is a preserver of the flesh. Why? We're going to show you that. And eat and live forever. So in other words, he already took of this tree that causes death, but the tree of life, right? And it was told to him that he will go down to the dust, right? When he ate of this tree, because as a process from being spiritual dead or disconnected from God, and the veils being raised up, causing separation, it will cause him to be spiritually discerned, not to understand God or comprehend, which is the very word to cause one to live, or the words to cause one to live. So he will be separated from those things, and we see that as a result, he will die physically and go back to the ground. Well, this tree has a supplement or information in it to preserve the flesh. How do I know that? Watch, we're going to show you. It says, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Now remember, these people are humans in a physical body that's made out of material, so to speak. So the food or the information that they're getting will cause them to be sustained. This is one of the ways that humans is sustained, by fruits and vegetables sustaining the body. Now, on the other aspect, far as the inner man, man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out the mouth of God. He must receive the word of God in order to grow both sides, right? So this is growing the material man and also the spiritual man, the word of God. And then when we look at anything that's material that he sustains himself with, that deals with the body. Because you can, from a physical and a psychological standpoint, these things are cohesive when they're together. If your mind state is not right, you can cause stress, and stress can cause problems with your body physically. This is a scientific fact. So let's look at this. Revelations 19. I'm sorry. Revelations 22. It says, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. And in the midst of the street of it, and on the either side of the river, was there the tree of life. This is an actual tree. Now watch this. Which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And there should be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb should be in it. So we see that the tree of life is for the healing of the nations. And so this is the very supplement that they're trying to get a hold of, to cause one to live in the body forever in a sinful condition apart from God.
そうじゃないですか。だからもう全部機械にしまうと。で、脳だけ残すと。で、ネットとつながると。で、スーパーコンピューターつながると。
He said, let's change our bodies into machines. Then we will plug into the net, and the net will be connected to the supercomputer.
だから頭賢さですね、知能は。
Thus, our intelligence will become 2 billion times what it is now. We will basically become like gods. This is what this Asiatic person is saying right now.
人類2兆倍ぐらいあるわけですね。でそういう、神のようなね、人間になりたい、私はね。
He said that's an incredible proposition.
これだからなんかねこう
But there's a part of man that feels like when it's time to die, it's time to die, and it's okay.
死ぬ時は死ぬでいいかっていうのはどっかあるんですよ。
それはね、仕方がないからですよ。
そうです。
That's because it seems death is inevitable. This is what he says. And the other guy says, yes, it is.
これが死ななくても済むというオプション。
What if I told you that you don't have to die and you have the option to live on forever? What would you say?
があった時にどっち選びます？
でもね、そこ迷うところでね。
He said that's a difficult dilemma. There's a part of me that feels as though it's better to accept my death as part of my faith and die.
自分の体が運命として受け止めて死んでいった方がいいんじゃないかなっていうところありますね。
それはね、
You feel that way because throughout history, all living beings shouldered the burden of death. It is inevitable.
今まであらゆる生物が死ななきゃならないという運命を背負ってるからね、それはもう宿命なわけです。だけど、数はあるわけですよ。
But according to Carswell, there is an eternal future for humanity.
未来永劫に生きる方法がある。それは分かりませんよ。
Well, we don't know if we will achieve it, but assuming we will, what will you do? It's challenging proposition, isn't it?
でも、できたとしましょう。ね、どっち選びますかって。そう言ったら辛いでしょう。
そこまでずっと
Do we really want to take it that far? Well, in this future, our bodies will no longer exist. But human beings aren't our bodies alone. Somebody gonna get that, somebody not.
肉体なくなるわけだけど、でも人間って肉体じゃないですよ。やっぱり精神、魂。
Our essence is mind, consciousness. Somebody better understand that. Consciousness is what moves the material world. Consciousness is what sequences the material world. Information, awareness, also conscience. This is something that is a mechanism that we see that even doctors know. If your mind state is not together, it's going to affect the material world. Now, if your body is not together, it's going to affect your consciousness. Why? Because it's cohesive as long as you are attached to the body. So if this part of ourselves live on, we would basically be in heaven.
意識でしょ。で、これだけが生き続ければ、一種の天国ですよ、そこはね。地獄かもしれんけど。
Or hell, I suppose. That's what he said. He said, are you afraid it might be hell? And he started laughing. And let's get off to this other conversation.
It is at a certain distant point in the future when robots do become gradually more intelligent. Instead of fearing them, we should either put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they get murderous, or we should merge with them. Because our descendants may have a choice. A, get older and older every year and die. Or B, wake up in an enhanced, genetically enhanced body of silicon and glass and live forever. So if you're faced with that choice, live a decrepit life, aging year after year, or be a Superman, young, handsome, virulent, and immortal, what should you choose?
We humans might decide to upload ourselves into computer memory banks, which will then go out and colonize nearby stars. They will be virtual humans, not humans at the lowest level of reality, which is what we now are, but you might think of a spiritualized aspect of ourselves. This is solid science, but now science and religion have become intertwined. I could use either language, scientific language or religious language, to describe exactly the same thing. Human beings in the far future will be primarily virtual humans. And And it is those virtual humans that will get into tiny spaceships and travel to the distant stars, colonize those nearby stars, start the same process again. What will happen is the universe will be slowly but surely converted from its current dead matter state into a living matter state. In the far future, the entire universe will be one gigantic computing machine.
Now remember, in order to accomplish this, it's going to take much and more of resources of what's in the earth. So we see that if you're going to build these machines, right, everybody can't go. Why? Because you have to utilize what's in the earth and what you can in order for you to experience this, or the elite to experience this. So if everybody was given this type of body or technology, then what will happen is we wouldn't have an earth. We would use up all the resources of the earth. So just remember, one of the reasons why they're mining and also trying to deal with alchemy and create all types of metals from base metals is due to the fact of them needing more product. You know, and they don't want to get it away to where they don't want to get it the way they're getting it, because it causes other problems. So we also have to look at that just as well.
In Genesis 3:7, it states, "Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves." This act of sewing fig leaves to cover themselves is the first instance we see in the Bible of innovation in an attempt to solve a problem, in this case, the fall of humanity. Ever since the fall, mankind has been working diligently to reverse the effects. This is perhaps why we as humanity are inherent seekers of truth, wisdom, and knowledge, and not automatic possessors of it. But it seems our own efforts, while noble, will never fully restore what we have lost. Later in the chapter, in verse 21, God, quote, "made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them." The understanding here is that it will be God who will restore us, not our own efforts. Furthermore, because garments of skin will...
Now, did you get that? It will be God that will restore us. Now remember, the scriptures is clear in Romans that when we study the material world, it helps us to understand the things that are invisible of what we call the spiritual world, the things that scientists cannot measure, but we know that it's there. Now, one of the things that is stated there is that God's creation, the Godhead, and also his eternal power. Now, eternal power is what is used for stability to stabilize everything, right? And balance and order. Now, when there is a lack of that power, then what happens is it causes decay. It causes subatomic particles to break down. It causes them to split. So when we look at it, it causes alpha and beta decays until it breaks down to it is at a stable level. But we look at it, there is not a indefinite source of energy to go around to cause this planet to be energized and to be charged up on a consistent basis. For instance, it's like a car and a battery. The battery is what makes the car basically cycle with the alternator and the different components, but the battery causes it to continue to cycle, right? Now, eventually, whatever machine you have, if it doesn't have a source of energy or indefinite source of energy, it's going to die out. That's just bottom line. It's going to die. This is even how stars die, which we never experienced when reborn again, but we know how they die. We have seen them explode and die. Well, let's continue on. So we got to understand that you cannot do nothing apart from God, because he's the eternal power that causes you to have some type of stability about yourself and not to be basically degenerating and running off of old battery juice that's almost gone because the battery is leaving out, and we didn't, you know, the battery is dying out, and we trying to do everything to try to charge the battery up, and we're causing other problems. Why? Because we don't have the manual precisely to restore ourselves. And when we did try to come up with a solution, we see that more stuff continue to happen. Side effects, basically.
Required the killing of an animal. It was the first example of the consequences of the fallen world, that sustenance requires sacrifice. While there are many trivial problems in the world that machines and advances in science have helped solve, especially in the last 2 centuries, there is a much deeper seated problem found in the heart of man. The Bible calls this problem sin, but in fact, this flaw in humanity is recognized by almost every religion in the world, regardless of what they call it. Even the self-proclaimed atheists or the agnostics cannot deny this inherent shared problem. Many in the new atheist camp are quick to blame religion as the root of the problem.
That's for you, Lex Vortex. Notice he said agnostics. You can't escape it. It's inevitable, bruh. Stop it. He's going to get off and dig off into these agnostics and those that look at their teachings as to be something that is Kabbalah and all of these things, these traditional teachings that's against the creator God. He's going to dig off into y'all right now. You might want to listen to this.
Yet I would imagine that even if religion were completely wiped out, these inherent problems within the heart of man would persist. In Buddhist philosophy, there are 4 noble truths. The first, dukkha, means dislocation or hindrance from our purpose. And the second, tanha, being desires that are unwanted that hinder us from the true goal of attaining nirvana. These 2 noble truths in Buddhism are very similar to the Christian concept of sin. Similarly, all worldviews share the act of rituals, rules, and regulations prescribed as a means to help us eradicate these flaws and to achieve the transcendence of inherent human nature. The exception to this methodology is biblical Christianity, where it is through the grace of God and the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ that offers us salvation, not any ritual, rule, or regulation. Modern technology has undoubtedly been the most transformative in all of human history. Many people recognized the transformative potential and power of technology early on.
Now, it has been said that God is a vampire, right? That's what they say. Now, what we must realize is the very system that you see that was put together for sacrificing. When we look at the root of the word God, the scanscurt, it means to sacrifice, invoke, or to call. Now, when we look at it, every ancient culture sacrificed or participated in some type of ritual. What we must realize is those things were basically establishing some type of covenant or some type of appeasement, right? Whether it was to a false God or a true God. Now, with the true living God, this is one of the things we got to look at. In life, right, if one does not follow instructions, he basically leads himself to bloodshed and him being the progenitor of all life, those that come with him, from him, will also be up under the consequences, because what he does cause innocent blood to be shed just as well. So when we look in the Bible in Genesis 3, what we realize is that Adam and Eve broke a covenant or a contract. And that contract, they had two things that was given to them: choose life or choose death. And they broke a contract. So therefore their blood was required of them. Why? Because this is life. When one does not follow instructions, then what happens is he causes consequences. And those consequences is not just on him, but also on those that is in his vicinity, or those that is around, those that are around him. Now, when we look at that concept is universal. If one thing is not in cycle, or one thing is not in order, it causes disorder and chaos among everything that's connected to it. Because Adam was connected to his very world. So therefore, when he sinned and Eve sinned, everything that came from them that would be like them. Because why would it be like them? Because these people basically have shared information genetically, as we can see just as well, and carry certain traits and characteristics that will follow. So when we look at it, and we look at the overall, we have to look at it and say that one of the things we see is that God made a substitute. And looking at the bloodshed of something that was innocent, that had not sinned, which was an animal to cover the sin of Adam and Eve, is something that we see in life. Innocent blood is always shed at the hands when somebody break instructions, or at the hands when somebody disobey. That's the cycle that we're put in, because we're connected with each other. If one sin, his sin can cause innocent blood to be shed. So this is a principle and a cycle that we see in the earth. So therefore, when we look at one taking an animal which was lower than him and shedding that as a substitute, pointed to Christ, basically. It pointed to Christ. But instead, what's beautiful about Christ, because Christ was God in the flesh, and he came and laid down his life for those who he created, and put forth a memorial that we see, or did we see in the past, or something that a foreshadow that pointed towards him being a substitute who had not sinned, and bringing them into everlasting life.
In the 19th century, when groups like Technocracy Incorporated were formed in an attempt to politicize the technological movement.
Hello, I'm Arvid Peterson, and this is the first of a two-part presentation on technocracy, an alternative social system. Because of the turmoil throughout the world, and because of the uncertainties about the future of North America, it is not surprising that many Americans are becoming quite concerned. The relentless bombardment of conflicting statements that come from our business and financial leaders, the inane rhetoric pouring from the mouths of politicians, and the fragmented bits of news that come from the media all add up to general confusion throughout the land. Fortunately, however, there is a solution to the many problems facing this country and this continent. And the purpose of these discussions is to talk about those problems and to delineate the kind of solution that is needed. To introduce to you the subject, science applied to social operations. These programs are not intended to entertain or amuse you, nor are they meant to scare you. We are making a new approach. It is not political, financial, philosophical, legal, religious, or moral. It is a technological approach. Technocracy is the scientific answer to America's social problems.
The Zeitgeist movement has pushed the Venus Project, which is essentially a technocratic utopia maintained by machines that will produce goods and services to the needs of humanity. And again, while such a cause is noble, and the film Zeitgeist, moving forward, gives its case for why a society built on machine production rather than human labor will solve all the world's problems, it is my firm belief that it will not change the inherent flaws found in the human heart. Abundance does not equal altruism. While technology has given rise to new possibilities, the issue of abusing this power still remains. In fact, the advent of a world government and a world economic system are predicated on the advancement of technology.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that.
We propose that everybody, every American, citizen, legal immigrant gets a non-forgeable employment card, a national employment card. It has a little chip in there that you can't forge that matches the retina of your eye. Now, every employer would have to swipe the card through a little machine like a credit card machine when someone applied for a job. It would have their picture on it, of course. Right. And if the computer said they're a citizen, I got it. Or they're illegal, I got it. I think I got it. But here's the other part. If the employer doesn't swipe the card or hires him anyway, first time, a $50,000 fine. Second time, jail. It will cut illegal immigrants, and then the Baileys will be willing to accept lots of legal immigrants who we need in this country.
Have you ever gone shopping or loaded up your cart with food or clothing and then get to the checkout line and find out you've left your wallet in the car? Well, tonight we'll show you the technology that makes it simple to just touch and go. It's sci-fi technology that's about to enter the checkout lane, all in the name of
Speed and convenience.
you'll be able to buy anything from bread to beer if you agree to give the store your ultimate identity. Once you have your groceries scanned, now what do you...
Now, listen to that. Notice it says your ultimate identity. Now, remember this. Whenever you want to upgrade your security, you got to be willing to give up some privacy. Just understand that. So we talk about crisis management. In other words, they create a crisis and come up with a solution to manage that crisis. And one of the things that they create is identity theft, fraud. So once a national or international, how can you say that? International, how can you say it? Once you see that something happens internationally to where someone goes in and hacks the system, in order to make the people feel secure, they're going to need personal information from you. This is what the all-seeing eye is really about, because it's dealing with intel, and it's a false, omnipresent type of ideal. So we have to understand that. Because Satan wants to have intel and be omnipresent and be everywhere at one time, and because he can't do it, one of the ways that he can do it is through technology and also through human agents. This is the beast system, right? This is a system that he is building to emulate everything that God has done. God has made. Now, here's the scenario here. Moses goes before the Pharaoh. He does certain things that the magicians and enchanters follow up and do too. This is how you even look at science. If something has been done that you feel in creation, or has been done that we feel by God, they feel that they can emulate it and say that we can do that too. So you ain't omnipresent, you're not omnipotent or omniscient or none of those things, because we can do the same thing, right? But if you notice, when Moses got to a step that they couldn't
or they could not duplicate or produce or experiment or test on, and he did it, which dealt with the fleas. I mean, with the I believe it was head lice. It was the lice, which dealt with the lice. They stated this is the finger of God. So there's certain things that you cannot do that when they can't explain it, it leads back to God. As I stated, the book of Romans, looking at the material world helps us to understand the immaterial, or the things that are unseen with the natural, with the natural eye. So we have to look at that and say that there are just certain things that cannot be done by man.
You do. You punch in your PIN number, touch your index finger to the image reader, and you pay in about 3 seconds, all with the touch of your fingertips. It's called biometrics, an automated way to recognize you based on your unique biological characteristics. Each person's fingerprint is a unique identifier, not biologically duplicated anywhere else in the world.
Well, Big Brother will now be taught at a school near you. Across the country, schools are finding ways to track and monitor students inside and outside the classroom. The techniques range from chips embedded in school ID cards to GPS systems installed in computers, tracking students' every move, to actual surveillance cameras. And it's happening in Texas. These are the IDs students are required to carry that have tracking trips built right into them, so teachers know where their students are at all times. Well, schools say the measures will help make kids safer, but is it just going too far?
If this takes off, they're expecting within like a couple of years to have advance in Texas and impact around 100,000 students in 122 different schools. And of course, like I said, it's it's going to be a slippery slope. If we see it working here,
you got to chip your ID card. Well, what happens next?
It's a very good question.
You're somewhere else.
There's actually, I saw someone saying online that it just prepares students for the real world, where they go enter adulthood and they are constantly
monitored. It's not the real world I went to school in.
Yeah,
anyway,
times are changing, Liz.
Times are changing. That much is true.
Mismatch between humans and electronics, right? So electronics are boxy and rigid, humans are curvy and soft. That's a mechanical mismatch problem. Well, a researcher at the University of Illinois, his name is Dr. Rogers, what he discovered is that he could use standard CMOS techniques to make islands of high-performance silicon connected by accordion-like structures that would allow it to stretch up to 200% and still be performing. And what he did is he founded a company and they started making electronic tattoos. So I'm wearing one here on my arm.
Do we have a camera to get a...
This is a developmental system made by MC10, and it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it. And what we plan to do is work with them to advance a tattoo that could be used for authentication. Now, it may be true that 10 to 20-year-olds don't want to wear a watch on their wrist, but you can be sure that they'll be far more interested in wearing an electronic tattoo, if only to piss off their parents.
Right. So we see what I'm saying? Like, one of the ways that the government come in, or the beast system, is also through entertainment. You know, I know we love our smartphones. We love our PlayStation, our Xboxes, you know, the greatest cameras. But if you notice, even our apps on our phones, but if you notice, every time when you sign up for these apps, it wants to have control over certain things that is private unto you. It wants control of those, and it actually acts. And because we look at it and we say, man, I got to have this app. This app would make my life a little bit more comfortable. It's even apps to deal with certain things that we can use, and some things are just entertaining. One of the ways we're going to say yes to it is because we see that it's doing something for us, but at the same time, it's giving up our privacy rights. But we're actually giving them up because we're eagerly signing these things over due to the fact of what we feel that we need or what we feel that we want.
And that can have a design, right? Sure. They would certainly want some kind of cool design.
Options. And that's something that you wear, but you could also imagine including authentication in just your daily habits. So I take a vitamin every morning. What if I could take vitamin authentication?
What?
Vitamin authentication. Look, I have one right here. Well, here, I'll let you hold it. Would you like to hold it?
I'll hold it.
Okay. So this,
you guys see it?
This pill has a small chip inside of it with a switch. It also has what amounts to an inside-out potato battery. When you swallow it, the acids in your stomach serve as the electrolyte, and they power it up, and the switch goes on and off. And it creates an 18-bit ECG-like signal in your body, and essentially your entire body becomes your authentication token. Yes, this is true. Okay?
Okay, but...
Okay, so wait. So it's really true. So what this means is that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower. It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated in. First superpower. Like, I want that.
So we're not shipping that right away.
Yeah, no. We're not shipping that right away. But it
But
sounds like...
this is FDA cleared?
So here's the thing.
And to be honest, they're using this thing to even enhance themselves and enhance technology. This is what's taking place. I need to find out what that is, Kevin, and I know you know what it is because you told me what it was. And it pops up and it says there was a problem starting. The specified module could not be found. So I know you know what that is. So when you get a chance, you're gonna have to help me get that up off of this computer because it always pops up when I start the computer and also during certain times, you know, while I'm on this computer. I don't know what it is, but it's been doing it ever since I downloaded Windows 10 from off of, or ever since the update of Windows 10.
This is not science fiction. This pill was actually made by a company called Proteus, and they've developed it for medical applications. That pill has been CE stamped and cleared by the FDA. You can take 30 of those per day for the rest of your life.
It's a new technology that is unlocking the Pulse password. Your heartbeat reveals a lot about you and not just about your health.
There's actually unique characteristics that relate to the size of the heart, the position of the heart, and the physiology surrounding the heart.
It's as unique as your fingerprint, and now it's being used to replace passwords, key cards, bank cards, even credit cards.
So it's like your personal PIN number is your heartbeat.
Imagine opening a door without a key, having your tech gadgets like smartphone or tablet unlock the second you walk into a room, or making a purchase at a store without using a credit card. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but technology expert Lance Ulanoff says it's the way of our very near future.
It's going to be a way for us to interact with the world around us without having to constantly identify ourselves.
Canadian company Bionym developed this little wristband to recognize the pattern of your pulse. The wristband then transmits that information so you can perform transactions like withdrawing money without a bank card, even opening a car door without a key.
You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to do anything special.
And it's not the only concept. Motorola is developing a temporary tattoo that contains a computer chip and antenna. Also in the works, a pill that, when dissolved by stomach acid, turns the whole body into a kind of transmitter.
The whole move of these implants, there are a couple of stupid companies like the Verichip Corporation, with all its various names, that come out and say, oh, well, we want to sell this as a product. I don't think it's going to happen that way. People don't want an ID microchip. But if you turn around and instead say, you'll be able to listen to music and access Facebook and you know, get your email through this little implant, you're going to have a stampede of people wanting to do it.
Neil Postman, in his book entitled Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Disclosure in the Age of Show Business, stated, quote, what Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies, the orgy-porgy, and the centrifugal bumble-puppy. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World Revisited, the civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever on the alert to oppose tyranny failed to take into account man's most infinite appetite for distractions. In 1984, Huxley added, people are controlled by inflicting pain. In Brave New World, they are controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. This book is about the possibility that Huxley, not Orwell, was right. Beyond the controlling aspects of technology in a tyrannical political or social system, there are some who tout that technology itself is more akin to a new life form. Kevin Kelly, the man who helped launch Wired magazine, who was the chief editor of its first 7 years, stated in his book, What Technology Wants, quote, in biological evolution, there is no designer, but in the technium, there is an intelligent designer, sapiens. In the words of psychologist Sherry Turkle, technology is our second self. It is both other and us. Unlike our biological children, who grow up to have minds completely separate from us, the technium's autonomy includes us and our collective minds. We are part of its selfish nature. The ongoing dilemma of technology, then, will never leave us. It is an ever-elaborate tool that we wield and continually update to improve our world, and it is an ever-ripening superorganism of which we are but a part, that is following a direction beyond our own making. Humans are both master and slave to the technium. Calling technology a superorganism may seem ridiculous at first, but not only is there ample evidence that we ourselves are the nurturers of this organism, there is clear prophetic biblical understanding to the development as well.
This is a very widespread belief in our society. It's the kind of belief system of people who say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science. It's a belief system which has now been spread to the entire world. But there's a conflict in the heart of science between science as a method of inquiry based on reason, evidence, hypothesis, and collective investigation, and science as a belief system or a worldview. And unfortunately, the worldview aspect of science has come to inhibit and constrict the free inquiry, which is the very lifeblood of the scientific endeavor. Since the late 19th century, science has been conducted under the aspect of a belief system or worldview, which is essentially that of materialism, philosophical materialism. And these sciences are now wholly owned subsidiaries of the materialist worldview. I think that as we break out of it, the sciences will be regenerated.
Philip Ashley Fanning, in his book entitled Isaac Newton and the Transmutation of Alchemy, an alternate view of the scientific revolution, stated, quote, in alchemy, human beings had a method of seeking ultimate truth, and it seems to have worked, at least for a fortunate few. The ancient science enabled its practitioners to probe the deep structures of reality and participate in an ongoing creation of the physical world. Later, Fanning goes on to comment on the Philosopher's Stone. Quote, the so-called medicine of the metals, the stone, was thought able to cure supposed diseases of base metals such as lead and tin, thereby enabling them to the perfect metals, silver and gold. Similarly, it was seen as the elixir of life, able to heal man's ills and postpone death. Most important, the stone can help a person merge with the divine spirit that pervaded the universe, in the process becoming godlike himself, a magus. Alchemists viewed the Philosopher's Stone as the key to all knowledge. Dr. Fred Alan Wolfe, in his book entitled Mind into Matter, A New Alchemy of Science and Spirit, said, quote, most modern dictionaries popularly dismiss alchemy as an immature, empirical, and speculative precursor of chemistry, having had as its object of transmutation of base metals into gold. But although chemistry did evolve from alchemy, the two schools of thought never really had much in common. Whereas chemistry deals with scientifically verifiable and objective phenomena, the mysterious doctrine doctrine of alchemy pertains to a hidden, subjective, abstract, and higher order of reality. Perceiving and realizing this reality is and was the goal of the alchemist. They call this goal the magnum opus, or great work, absolute realization. Dr. Wolff goes on to describe his position on modern-day scientific practice, stating, quote, "As smart as we are in the modern world, we apparently can never pass behind the veil which divides the seen from the unseen, except by engaging ourselves in the way appointed by the ancients, the mysteries." Physicist Wolfgang Pauli once put it that scientists went too far in the 17th century when they attempted to make everything understandable strictly as objective science. By denuding the subjective view from any firm ground, much was lost. Modern science has attempted to make the study of the subjective a mere reflection of the objective and reducible science of matter. Some of us, including many scientists, don't agree with the new objective materialism. We believe in our heart of hearts, as did the alchemists that came before us, that something far richer than materialism is responsible for the universe.
So we're talking about the word supernatural. A simple dictionary definition is something like not of the natural world. You know, a synonym would be something like preternatural. You know, and this broadly covers a span of everything from belief in God or various deities to things like magic, the paranormal, and the occult. Now, the term supernatural really originates from a 16th century medieval Latin supernaturalis, which supra is just the Latin for above, plus naturalis, which means nature. So you're basically, you know, above nature. So most folks are thinking of something that violates, you know, like known scientific laws like gravity, something that we call a miracle. Now, miracles are described in the Bible, and they seem to fit into two broad categories. Now, the first category would include, you know, events that are occurring with supernatural timing or supernatural placement or both, but in and of themselves, you know, they're a natural event, but the timing or how it occurs is above nature because God does it, or a supernatural agent like an angel would do it. Now, the second type of miracle encompasses a supernatural event where the phenomenon itself would defy physical laws of the universe. Like in 2 Kings chapter 6, Elisha makes an iron axe head float to the surface of the water. So this clearly...
Now he's doing this on purpose. When he says the iron, he says, then the man of God said, where did it fall? When he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in and made the iron float. This goes against the laws of physics, either way we put it. So why do we have texts that are stating things that we see as miracles, as Jesus walking on water and speaking into the storm and to where the disciples look and say, what manner of man is this that even the seas and the wind obey him? So we have to look at this and say that he's basically showing us that he's working these things. And so the very things that we say that is impossible is the very things that he is working because we are ignorant of how to work it. So this is the things that we see and we can look at and say, this is the finger of God.
Violates physical laws. Something like when Jesus walked on water, that would clearly violate known physical laws. So we have these two kind of categories of miracles. But, you know, when we're talking about something being above nature, it does beg the question of what is nature? And this is where you get into quite a bit of controversy in philosophical circles. And this really comes into what we call metaphysics in philosophy. It's kind of the branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of reality. And you really can't talk about supernatural without having a metaphysical theory of reality. Now, what this really means is meta is a prefix meaning beyond or after or something like that. So you have beyond physics. So it's actually very congruent with the concept of supernatural because we're talking about what is beyond physics. So sort of questions that philosophers look at in metaphysics are things like, does God exist? But I mean, other things like, do numbers and mathematical objects exist independently of the human mind? Or this was another one that's even more interesting. Does anything exist apart from the human mind? And there's actually some pretty rigorous philosophical arguments for what is called idealism, which basically says that everything is ultimately mental and that matter doesn't exist. But the dominant, metaphysical worldview that's taught in our universities and, in science is reductive materialism or naturalism. And this is the idea that all of reality is explained simply by matter and energy and acting according to the laws of chemistry and physics. However, they don't really have any evidence to make such a broad claim like that. And, I think that naturalism or reductive materialism itself is actually a mythology, mainly perpetrated by secularists and atheists to support their worldview. Now, they have what they call a program of demythologizing religious claims and supernatural claims. They believe that there are no true supernatural spiritual realities, only natural phenomena. So they assume there must be a natural explanation behind every religious belief or supernatural claim. Thus, they assert things like scientifically ignorant people create myths and religious symbols for natural phenomena that they don't understand. For instance, like a culture that doesn't understand thunder, so it interprets thunder to represent a deity in order to make sense of it somehow. So the goal of the naturalist or reductive materialist is then to discover the natural causes of these things, and then drove this culture to create this mythology, and they demythologize it by explaining it away. Now that's happened in our culture to some degree, so they have some points in that, and we have discovered a lot of natural causes for things that we used to think were supernatural. But the art of demythologizing is really itself a mythology, because it just asserts a bald-faced assertion that there are no supernatural or transcendent kind of mysteries to life, and then it interprets everything that it cannot understand in terms of naturalism or reductive materialism. For instance, there's quite a few things that they don't have answers for, like the Big Bang cosmology. They've pretty much proven by their own scientific methods that the whole universe came into being at a point in time from nothing. Because nature came into being at that time, whatever caused that, whatever made that process ensue, is by definition supernatural, because it caused nature to come into being. So we really do have evidence for the supernatural in the Big Bang cosmology, just because whatever made it bang is by definition above natural. So they really have undermined themselves by their process of investigation. And there's other things like the origin of life. They really don't have any good natural explanations for how life got started. So, we see prominent scientists, looking at extraterrestrial explanations for that. Naturalism, reductive materialism, which is our dominant university-taught worldview, is in deep trouble. It's actually dying. And what we are beginning to see now, though, is not so much a revival of Christian supernaturalism. It's more, we're starting to see a rise of kind of a pantheistic monism, a kind of a spiritualism that's beginning to get a lot of traction in the culture. So I'm predicting that we're going to see quite a rise in the supernatural worldview. It's going to be something that's a little more in the occult paranormal realm, but I think that materialism is actually dying, and it probably doesn't have another generation left before it's completely disproven.
There are several more books that seem to be igniting a metaphysical or spiritual component into the scientific worldview, including Lee Bladon's The Science of Spirituality, integrating science, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, and religion. The Dalai Lama's The Universe in a Single Atom, The Convergence of Science and Spirituality. Dr. Massimo Citro's The Basic Code of the Universe, The Science of the Invisible in Physics, Medicine, and Spirituality. And Dr. Charles Taft's 2009 book, The End of Materialism, How Evidence of the Paranormal is Bringing Science and Spirit Together. When commenting on the book, The End of Materialism, author and Dr. Larry Dossey said, quote, "A Amid the flurry in science about genes, neurons, and neurotransmitters, another quiet revolution has been building for several decades. It involves the view of consciousness, in which the mind is not confined to specific points in space or time, such as the brain, body, and the present. Tart's inspiring, majestic image of consciousness will prevail because of two compelling reasons. It is built on good science, and it more fully accounts for who we humans are and how we behave.
All right, so people, that's it. We're not gonna go through this. It's 3 hours of this, but we did a hour or at least 26 minutes. And so, I just wanted to bring some of those things out. Hey, brother Kevin, are you there? Did you have anything you want to say about that?
No, I just think it's fascinating. And I think what else is fascinating too is that it's all about perception and how we perceive. Like these things that we think are supernatural are just phenomenon that we don't really quite understand. For example, I was reading up earlier about the double slit experiment, and just to speak briefly on that, the double slit experiment is that there are waves that go through two slits in, say, like a board or a piece of paper, and when these waves end up on the other side of the paper into what we call as an interference interrupter, they show what's called an interference pattern, meaning that these two things, they collide, they create a pattern, and these patterns interfere with one another. And to give you a visual of that, just imagine dropping 2 drops of water in like some, 2 drops of water in the puddle. And then when you see the 2 ripples occur side by side, you see how the ripples interfere with one another. That's an interference pattern. But however, when scientists observe the particles, they're noticing that the particles change the way they're interfered, and they don't create interference patterns. But when they do not look at it, it does create them. And so what this goes to is people can look at what's called Copenhagen's theory on that. And there's also something called the double split experiment eraser, in which what they tried to do was observe exactly what was going on, why the particles reacted the way they do, and why they change based on the observance and how we see it. So when we tried to do this, what we found is particles talk to each other by way of entanglement, meaning that if one particle is split by a crystal and it travels one direction and then it's split going another direction, whatever happens to either one of the particles, they kind of talk to each other beyond space and time and reflect the same result no matter what happens to the other. It's almost like they're communicating with one another. So when we see things in the Bible, such as when Christ say, when you see me, you see the Father, or I and the Father are one. And he says, and then also in another way, he says, my Father in heaven. If people don't really think about the phenomenon of light, because Christ did refer to himself as the light, it's possible for an entanglement between two beings beyond space and time as we observe it, but for them to have that connection and to receive a word. Like when it says in the beginning of Hebrews, in times past, our Father spoke to us by the prophets. Was this an entanglement of some sort? Was it an entanglement between God's consciousness and the consciousness of that particular man? And to say that, well, where does God exist, does not really, according to the science, negate the fact that something outside of our space and time or outside of our realm can communicate with us via the phenomenon of entanglement. Another thing, too, is the phenomenon of life after death. When we look at that, with this, scientists are saying that the way we perceive life may not be what it is, but it's the way that it is, the way we perceive it based on our consciousness, how our consciousness perceive it. And you can read a paper out there called the Biocentrism by a guy named Dr. Robert Lanza. And he writes a paper called Biocentrism, the Theory of Everything. And what he explains is that since everything that we observe in our universe is guided by our consciousness, meaning if we look up in the sky and we say the sky is blue, but at the same time, what's making that reality is the chemicals in our brain that rearrange themselves to make it perceive that it is blue. So that shows that what we perceive in reality comes from what's within our consciousness and what's within our mind. So when we go in the Bible and we see things such as, man cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless he is born again. And Paul reiterates this by saying, by the renewing of your mind. So it is to look at the truth and the light and the phenomenon of quantum entanglement and the fact that our consciousness perceives reality as we see it, then we really have to take a step back and really say to ourselves, what is reality and what truly is supernatural? Because there are things that when we look at quantum mechanics, we cannot fathom at all how these things carry out, how they do these things, how are these things possible. I mean, stuff that goes beyond Star Trek. Goes beyond stuff that's just mind-blowing. So when we look at these things, and then we look at a being such as this, and an entity such as God, and these things being explained, and we can see these things, what is it? The transfiguration of Christ. He was with Moses and Elijah. But we do see in time that he was with Moses in the Mount Sinai, and he was also with Elijah. So when that transfiguration occurred, this is something my father explained to me. He says, what if God, when the transfiguration occurred, they saw into a glimpse of the reality that their conscience made, that God, because God opened their eyes and he revealed himself to him. What if they peered into the reality, their conscience may bear witness to the reality in which Christ existed, that he is not within time, that he is in all places at once. That's why they saw him with Moses and Elijah. It could have been at that point that they saw him together. And they said, well, can we build an altar? Can we build something to this? He says, no, don't do that. And it makes sense because it's like, guys, you just looked at a phenomenon that you don't understand, but you want to set up a religious artifact or something to try to worship it. Don't do that. Because he's like, look, there's many things in heaven you need to understand. He even told Nicodemus, when he told him the simple principle of being born again, Nicodemus didn't perceive it. He says, should a man enter again into his mother's womb and be born again? And he says later on, just paraphrase, it says, look, if I'm telling you things about now on this earth, how would you believe me if I tell you things about heaven? So it's really got to do with the preparedness of the mind and understanding that we really don't know anything. So to make a judgment to say this is supernatural, meaning beyond the natural, may be actually quite natural. I mean, but it's still a whole lot more I want to read on this, man. It's fascinating, but that's all I got to say.
Right, because when you look at 2 Corinthians 5:18, it says, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal. In other words, the things that you're seeing right now are temporal. They're subject to change. Things that you're viewing or seeing now, whether if it's problems or whether things that you see in the material world, they're subject to change. And we know that is dealing with also problems in the whole realm of the material world, because we know that there will be a new heaven and also a new earth. So we know that those things that we see now are subject to change. They're temporary. He says, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. In other words, there's things that we do not see, and these things are eternal things. And so when we look at that,
Well, why if I say something on that though?
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so if you this is what's fascinating. If you look at Robert Lanza's paper, his explanation on life after death, he actually proposes this theory. If it is in fact that our consciousness determines reality, and yet because we could perceive all things in our universe, and the concept of time and space are actually concepts that our mind create, then there must be other multi-universes or other places in which these constructs don't exist. For example, because we live in a limited universe in which we have the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy over time within a system tends to degrade over time. But there may be a universe in which that entropy does not occur because it's operating under another consciousness, or there's another consciousness that's perceiving that from an internal stance. Whereas our consciousness says, man, think about it. When man sinned in the garden, what happened to our world, and what does sin eventually causes? Death, right? So because of the change of man's mind when he ate the fruit, whatever that was, it altered his consciousness to perceive things to go through entropy. So what he is saying is, because entropy is a concept of the consciousness, and because God links sin with with death, saying when you sin, you fall short, or you miss the mark, you transgress the law, is death. Then there is a reality in which the bounds of time does not exist, nor does the bounds of space does not exist. So when Christ promised you, saying, whoever follows me will have life eternal, what is he saying? He's saying that I will deliver you from the construct, I will deliver you from their consciousness that you have, that limits you and gives you entropy, into one that does not bound you by entropy, nor will bound you by space and time. Because think about it. He asked him, he says, what's that? What's the verse where he says, take off your yoke and your burden, your heavy yoke, and take up upon mine?
Yep.
He said, because yours is heavy, basically. I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So basically the idea is, he's saying, cast your cares upon me. Get rid of that which is hindering your consciousness and come to me.
Right.
Lean on me. Rely on me.
You know what I brought out today? I brought that out today with Lex Vortex. We talked about empatry and entropy, right?
Second law of thermodynamics, right?
Yeah, I brought that out, and one of the things we see is it basically dealing with it's often interpreted as, to disagreement or disorder or randomness in the system. So, in regards to unavailability of systems of thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work. So when we begin to look at that, this is basically dealing with a lack of order, gradual decline. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Into disorder. So he's taking that entropy and delivering you the bottom of that entropy into the kingdom of his dear son, basically, where everybody will be born unto that kingdom, where he will establish the type of balance and the type of upkeeping of this universe. That's why it says in Ephesians that he's gathering all things together in heaven and on earth.
Right.
Yeah, man. Right. So and that's basically it, man. But I'm gonna lay it down.
Yeah, man.
I will holler at you tomorrow, brother. And peace and blessings.
All right, man. Peace.
All right. Peace to the family out there. Make sure y'all click and subscribe, and make sure y'all also share this. Thank you for listening in. For those that also listened in and interacted just as well in the chat room. And I just want to say, bless your families, and make sure y'all stay planted out there and rooted into the Most High. And with that being said, peace.